Welcome to the last chapter of this entire semester, the reproductive system. So before we get into the reproductive system, I do hope that you have had a wonderful semester, and I hope that you have learned a lot. So let's get right into the reproductive system because I'm sure you're excited to move on through this chapter. So when we talk about the reproductive system, we're looking at two major sets of functions. The reproductive system's major function is to reproduce, to produce new organisms from two different parents. So we have biparental reproduction, which means there's two individuals that produce one offspring. The offspring are not genetically identical to either parent, but half of the genes come from mom, half the genes come from dad, so that means our genes will live on. In the reproductive system, males produce sperm. The major organ of the reproductive system for the males is the testes. And females produce eggs, and our reproductive organ is the ovary. So males produce sperm that are motile. These motile sperm are going to move towards the egg. And females produce eggs that are non-motile, but they are very large and they have a lot of nutrition associated with them, so they can keep the potential zygote alive. If fertilization occurs, the initial single-celled organism that we all started out as is called a zygote. And this zygote will then undergo multiple mitotic divisions, which means they go through mitosis and specializations to form the blastocyst, and then the embryo, and then the fetus. So very exciting. So I told you already, but what are the gonads? The gonads are the primary sex organs. For males, that's the testes. For females, it's the ovaries. But the gonads do more than just produce sperm and egg. They also produce hormones. So hormones are what stimulate the body to get ready for reproduction. So basically, they stimulate those secondary sexual characteristics at puberty. Things like, for males, broadening of the shoulders, deepening of the voice, facial hair, axillary and pubic hair. For females, axillary and pubic hair, widening of the hips, and development of breasts. So those are some of those secondary sexual characteristics that we receive at puberty due to those hormones. And then hormones are also what stimulate the production of sperm and egg. So we're going to look at the male's duct system first, or the male's reproductive system first, which includes the testes and the duct system. And then we'll look at the female reproductive system, okay? Typically, male reproductive system is a little bit easier because, well, I won't say easier, I will say you can follow it a little easier. Going through meiosis for males is much easier than going through meiosis for females, which is why we typically go through the male reproductive system first. It's the easier to understand. Maybe that's the better way to say it. So here we have those testes. There'd be a testy here and a testicle over here. These hang outside of the body in a sac called a scrotal sac. And then we have a duct system. So the testicle is what produces the sperm and actually releases testosterone. Then we have the epididymis, which leads to this ductus deferens or vas deferens. This vas deferens wraps around the ureter and moves in, and here you have the ampulla of the ductus deferens. Over here we have a seminal vesicle. These two come together, forming an ejaculatory duct, which then runs into the urethra. So the first part of the urethra is the prostatic urethra, and around the prostatic urethra we have the prostate, which also secretes materials into the urethra. Move down, we have the membranous urethra, and here we again have a bulbourethral glands which secrete materials into the urethra. And then we have the spongy urethra and out. So we end up not just having sperm, but we have secretions called semen from the seminal vesicle, the prostate gland, and the bulbourethral gland that all move in. So the material that enters the vaginal canal is going to be millions of sperm with a lot of nutrients and protective chemicals surrounding those sperm. I just talked about these little critters. We have accessory organs that are really important. We have the prostate, we have the bulbourethral gland, and we have the seminal vesicle. All of these produce some of that semen. External genitalia, I actually didn't talk about the penis. I talked about the scrotum. The scrotum is the sac that holds the testicles outside of the body. This is because the testes produce sperm, but sperm have to be produced at a cooler temperature than body temperature. And so the testicles sit outside of the body in a cooler environment where sperm can be produced. And then we have the penis, which is the copulatory organ. So this is the organ that allows for reproduction to occur. So with the penis is what enters the vaginal canal and releases and then through the urethra we have the release of the sperm and semen. Here's another picture showing these different structures. So again, you can see the seminal vesicle. You can see the ampulla of the ductus deferens, and you can see that ejaculatory duct. Here's that first part of the urethra. There's that prostate. Here's that bulbourethral gland. And again, the urethra running through the penis. And here you can see that testicle, the epididymis, and then the beginning of the ductus deferens. So if we look at the testicles a little closer, each testis is going to contain these seminiferous tubules. So the testis is separated into what we call lobules, and each lobule contains its own seminiferous tubules. The seminiferous tubules are where sperm are produced. Covering the testis or surrounding the testis and protecting the testis, we have a tunica albuginea. And so that's this outer covering of the testicle. And then separating each of the lobules is a septa, which is part of that, kind of like part of that structure that separates into lobules, or separates the seminiferous tubules into their own little structure or lobule, okay? So each lobule contains your seminiferous tubules. These are where sperm are formed, and all the sperm then enter into what we call the rete testis, which then moves to the epididymis. Within the seminiferous tubules, we have interstitial cells. Interstitial cells produce the testosterones. that help in stimulating the secondary sexual characteristics, but also stimulate sperm production. And so I've talked about the duct system, but hold on because there's a lot of barking right now. Okay, it's done. So I've talked about the duct system. We have the epididymis, we have the ductus deferens, and we have the urethra. The epididymis is a tube that is very actually long, but it's coiled right on the edge of the testis. It would be the first part of the male duct system, right outside of the testicle itself. It is a temporary storage and it holds immature sperm. It's where sperm maturate before ejaculation. So they go there, they mature. As they move through the epididymis to the end of the epididymis, they become maturated, and then they're able to swim properly and potentially move to the egg if there's that chance. So here you can see the epididymis. This is all part of that epididymis. And then at the end of the epididymis, we enter that ductus deferens. So sperm, and this is that root testis. So sperm are produced here. They're immature, so production of sperm doesn't produce those perfect structures that look kind of like what you would think of a tadpole when you think of it. That's what I've always thought of. An immature sperm has no tail. It needs to gain the acrosomal cap. It also needs to gain that tail. And so once you have that's the sperm, which we typically call a spermatid, it's going to go through spermiogenesis. And this process occurs as it moves through this epididymis. And once it hits the end of the epididymis, it's typically going to be a mature sperm, which then can be moved through the ductus deferens at ejaculation. So the ductus deferens, or the vas deferens, runs from the epididymis to the ejaculatory duct, which enters into the urethra. The epididymis, or I'm sorry, not the epididymis. The ductus deferens is the structure that is typically cut during a vasectomy. And so that's how we can stop sperm from being ejaculated into the vaginal canal and keep from having more pregnancies. That's one mechanism. The vas deferens, or the ductus deferens, doesn't have any other function other than to move the sperm to that ejaculatory duct. That's its job, okay? So at ejaculation, the sperm are going to move from the ejaculatory duct towards or to the urethra via peristaltic waves. And actually this occurs from the epididymis all the way to that ejaculatory duct. And I already mentioned the vasectomy is the cutting of the ductus deferens, which is then going to stop sperm from moving into the vaginal canal. So from the ejaculatory duct, we move into the urethra. So the urethra is the last part of the duct system, and it carries not only the sperm, but also the semen that is produced from those accessory organs. The urethra of males is also part of that urinary system. So remember, it also carries urine into or out of the body when we are urinating. There are 3 parts to the urethra, which I've talked about in last chapter and already in this chapter, but you have that prostatic urethra, which has that prostate. You have the membranous urethra, which is where the bulbourethral gland is going to be located. And it releases into semen into the urethra. And then the spongy urethra, which is the longest portion that ends at the external urethral orifice. And so when ejaculation occurs, the internal urethral sphincter closes, and this prevents urine from passing. So the only thing that's going to actually pass would be sperm and semen into the vaginal canal. The closing of that urethra is not just to prevent urine from passing, but it also prevents sperm from moving into the bladder. And I've showed you this picture, so you can go through and look at the picture again, but I've just talked about these different structures again. So let's look at some of those accessory organs. I talked about each of these already, but you have seminal vesicles. Seminal vesicles produce nutrients and protective chemicals for the sperm. The prostate does the same, and then the Cowper's gland, or the bulbourethral gland, also known as your Cowper's gland, produces a mucus that lubricates the urethra, lubricates the end of the urethra, so kind of lubricates the tip of the penis for intercourse, and provides an alkaline substance that protects the sperm from the acidic environment. So seminal vesicles are going to produce secretions that are composed of fructose, vitamin C, and so the fructose is nutrition, so think of it as energy for the sperm. Sperm are motile, they have to produce ATP energy, and so they will take in fructose and they will produce ATP, which allows them to move. Okay. The prostate then produces a milky material that helps to activate the sperm. The milky material is called prostate-specific antigen, or PSA, and it basically liquefies the sperm so that the sperm can move faster. And then the bulbourethral gland, also known as your Cowper's gland, produces that clear mucus. The mucus protects the sperm from the acidic environment and provides lubrication during intercourse. And again, you can look at these different structures. It has been almost 20 minutes, so hold on one second, okay? All right, I only have about 4 or 5 slides left before we get to the first study guide material. So I'm going to finish this up. This is going to be probably about a 23-minute video. Apologies for a little bit long of a video. I know most people like the shorter videos. And now it won't move. There we go. So here you can see those same structures that we talked about. So this is just another figure showing the testicle, epididymis, ductus deferens, ejaculate or ampulla of ductus deferens, seminal vesicle, the ejaculatory duct, the prostate, the Cowper's gland, the prostatic urethra, membranous urethra, spongy urethra, the penis. We talked about what is found in semen. So semen itself is a mixture of sperm and the accessory gland secretions. The function is to allow the sperm to move easily towards the egg. The materials in the semen help to form or help to provide energy as well as protection from or for those sperm. So the last two structures we're going to talk about are the scrotum and the penis. The scrotum is going to surround the testicles, and then the penis is the copulatory organ. The scrotum is a sac that is housed or that houses the testicles outside of the body. Sperm can't be produced at body temperature. They have to be at a lower temperature, which is one of the reasons why people who are struggling with having a low sperm count are told not to use hot tubs or baths, because sperm can't be produced at hotter temperatures. And then the male sex organ or organ of copulation is the penis, and that's what delivers the sperm into the vagina. That we have the shaft of the penis, the glans penis, which is the tip of the penis, and then the prepuce, which is the foreskin. And the prepuce is often cut off at, usually in the US, around 1 or 2 days after birth. In other countries, it might be weeks after birth. And in some regions and some cultures, it's never removed. So it's just a cuff of, or it's a cuff of skin that surrounds the proximal end of the penis, or that gland, not the proximal end, that surrounds the end of the penis, the glans penis, okay? So within the penis, we have erectile tissue. There are 3 different areas of erectile tissue, and when the erectile tissue fills with blood, the penis becomes erect, which is why it's called erectile tissue. And so you can kind of see the erectile tissue here. You can see the erectile tissue here and there, okay? There's not a good picture of the scrotum. Let me look. You kind of see the scrotum here. Excellent. All right, so at this point, you should be able to answer what are gonads, both male and female. What are gametes, both male and female? What are the reproductive organs of the male? Where are sperm formed? What is the function of the epididymis? What is the end of the vas deferens called? When ejaculation occurs, what happens to the internal urethral sphincter? What are the accessory structures of the reproductive system for males? What does the seminal vesicle produce? What does the prostate gland produce? What does the bulbourethral gland produce? What is semen? And what is the function of the scrotum and penis? I'm going to stop here, and we will get into, oh geez. All right, nope, I knew that. Okay, we'll get into production of sperm and in our next video, okay? So have a wonderful day. I'll see you soon, or I'll talk to you soon.